Hello. Something a little bit different from me today. This is going to be a channel update and hobby bench. So what I'll be doing is talking about the projects I'm working on for the channel, new videos I've got coming up, and some other stuff outside of YouTube as well. And then I'll also talk about the projects that I'm working on from a hobby perspective. What am I collecting? What am I building? What am I painting and modeling and working on? What am I reading as well? So hopefully you enjoy this. It's going to be a bit more of a stream of consciousness, so it won't be quite as polished as some of the regular history videos, but hopefully it's still something interesting, and I'm going to answer a couple of those questions that people have posed to me about who exactly is Jordan Sorcery. Right, yeah, so let's start there then. Let's start with who is Jordan Sorcery, where have I come from? So obviously I launched the channel in November of last year. I wanted to create a space where I could talk about these games that I love, these games that I've collected for many, many years, that I've got a real history with and a connection with. I am more of a collector than I am a modeler or a painter. I just don't have those skills really. I like to collect games, I like to read them and immerse myself in those games, spend time with them and really try and find all of the different curios and rarities and strange things that were released over time, who created them and why, how did they create them, how did they evolve over time. That's a big part of the hobby for me. I love playing with those games, of course, as well, but I like collecting them and spending that time with them. So, I thought that that would be something that I could maybe bring to YouTube that I didn't really see a lot of. Yeah, sure, there are some great channels out there that do some of that stuff and do talk about the hobby and the context and the history. I just thought that there was maybe some space for me to step in there as well. And hopefully that is the case. I think that the reception to the channel has been amazing. I really do thank you all for watching and commenting and engaging with the videos. I couldn't have asked for a more awesome community. The way that people are sharing their own stories, their own histories with these games, I find it amazing. I'm super touched when people choose to come and view the videos, but when they choose to then share their experience with those games as well, that's really special and I think that's awesome. So yes, thank you very much for that. The channel has grown really quickly. I'm really pleased and gratified with where we are now. So at time of recording, we're around 2,800 subscribers, which is just totally awesome. It's been a great year so far. Some of the videos that I've put out have been really successful and have got a lot of engagement, which again, I'm super humbled by, but I think the Space Crusade video and the Hero Quest video have been very popular. Talisman that I've just released part 2 of is doing really well as well, so obviously people enjoying that. I actually went a bit more, I leaned more into some of the oddities of my sense of humour, I think, in that Talisman part 2, so hopefully people have enjoyed that. I'd like to bring some more of that humour, some more of me to the videos going forward. I'm also looking for those future videos to try and bring more of the human part of the story as well, and I think some of that was definitely in the Talisman videos, some of that was in the Hero Quest videos and some of the earlier videos as well. But I want to find a little bit more of those stories from the actual people involved, and in some cases, and I'll talk about them in a little bit, I'm actually reaching out to some of those people that were involved to get more of that sort of journalistic aspect as well. What's the biographical version of that history from the people who were involved? I would love to take the channel more into that space as well in the future to try and sort of bring that to life. So, where did I come from? I have a full-time job. I work in data science, data analytics. I am doing the channel just on the side at the moment. I would love to get to a place where actually the channel's a bit more sustainable and I could spend more time doing this because I'm really loving it. I'm really loving creating this stuff and researching this stuff and sharing this stuff. I think that there's obviously a long journey to go to get to that place. Where I've been lucky, I think, is that in my professional career, I have to use quite a lot of the skills that I use in the YouTube. So when it comes to research, when it comes to writing up the scripts and trying to tell a cohesive, interesting and compelling story, when you've got all of these different disparate bits of data and evidence and timelines and all of these different facts, bringing that together and drawing it into a story, that's a part of my day job. I do that with data and with all of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of transferable, and obviously I have to then present that story, I have to convince people of those findings, and that's part of this YouTube job as well. You're presenting and you're convincing people of, well, here's this story that I've found, here's why it's interesting, here is why you should give some of your attention to it. And I hope some of that transferable skill comes across. Before I got into that career, I actually studied something completely different at university. I studied what was then called time-based media, and they changed the name to visual media arts. Basically, filmmaking was what I did at university. A lot of old-fashioned filmmaking techniques. I did work with digital, I did work with Premiere and some of the editing software that I use today. That was so many years ago, more years than I care to count at this point. But that did give me a little bit of a grounding in, okay, what are the fundamental principles of editing digital video? How do you actually create your timeline and all of your different components? I mean, I will throw up on screen some of the behind the scenes of the Talisman video so you can just see what it looks like on Premiere. I think Talisman Part 2 was about 35 minutes, something around that length of time. There are hundreds of different elements in that video. All of the video footage, all of the audio, all of the sound effects and music and things of that nature. You've then also got every single one of those visuals, so all of the pictures of every product and different bits of art and adverts and all that sort of stuff. Each one of those obviously has to be treated separately. I try and make them all consistent, the backgrounds and all that sort of stuff, because I really wanted to build out this Jordan Sorcery brand. I wanted it to feel reasonably polished. You know, I'm still very new, I'm still learning a lot of stuff, and there's been loads of great constructive feedback that's really helped me improve things like lighting positions and volume levels and all of this other stuff. But I wanted to try and get out of the gate with a bit of a strong feel for what a Jordan Sorcery video would look like and feel like. And that's actually why it's kind of scary doing a video like this that's so different. Let's take a look at some of the projects that I'm now working on that will be coming out relatively soon. So this is not in order, these are just things that I am working on. They could come out quickly, they could take a little bit longer. It really depends what comes out in the research and all of the editing process and all of that sort of stuff. So don't expect this to be the itinerary for the next few weeks, but we have got coming up at some point Skaven. So I'm looking at the history of Skaven in Warhammer as a race. Where did they come from? Who created them? What were all of the different component parts that went into that creation? And how did they sort of manifest in the Warhammer world? And then what happened to them over time? How did they expand? And very Skaven-like, how did they grow to be this force that just has infiltrated all of these different games across Warhammer history? They are an absolute tentpole of the Warhammer world. I think they're very, very much a part of that core Warhammer universe, and I think it's very cool that they're quite iconic. So I mean, I love the Rat Boys. I want to spend some time talking about them, so I'm looking forward to getting that video out there. I've then got this video. This is one of those different formats, and this is going to be a video that you'll be seeing very soon. A battle report. I've got a different name for it. I'm calling it a battle retort, and that is because I'm trying to create this kind of feel of the demo games that they used to give in Games Workshop stores. So when I was younger and I went in, I was just getting into the hobby, they would do demo games of Warhammer Quest or Space Hulk or Warhammer, all of these different demos. And it wasn't so much about the rules, it wasn't so much about the mechanical aspects, it was really about the feeling and the story. You rolled the dice and you scored your results. They facilitated this grand storytelling experience that the staff members would do. And they bring it to sort of visceral life by explaining what was happening and what your warriors were doing and how they were cutting down the enemy or fleeing in fear or whatever it might be. It made the game more than a game. It made the game a story that I was part of. So I really love that. I don't think we see an awful lot of that. At least I've not seen in my experience an awful lot of that kind of approach to battle reports on YouTube. I think there's a lot of great battle reports, there's a lot of really good mechanical stuff, there's some really, really nice visuals to follow a game, but I personally can find it quite confusing because I don't know all of the units, I don't know all of the rules, I can't see all of the dice results, and I can't process all of that as the game progresses. So I'm trying to find a bit more of a format that is storytelling, that's narrative, that yes, you're going to see some of the tabletop stuff, you're going to see some of the dice results, but it's very much more about the story that emerges from the game that's being played. So I'm starting with a very, very simple game to sort of test this format out. I'm going to be doing stuff later in the year, which I'll talk about, that is a bit more sophisticated, I guess. But to start with these battle retorts, I'm doing Warhammer Quest Lost Relics. So this is a video that's going to come out pretty soon. I'm just playing through a mission at the start of the Quest campaign. We're going to see how it goes, see if I can bring the story to life, see if it's interesting and the visuals can support it. I'm really going to be looking for a lot of feedback on this one. So when it comes out, please do give it a watch and do give it a comment and just provide a little bit of your thoughts around what worked and what didn't work. On to another project I'm working on. This one is very dear to my heart. So it's a little bit different. It's not a Games Workshop game, this one. This is a TSR game that was released in the late 90s when TSR was trying to expand their reach. They essentially wanted to create a Dungeons & Dragons style core rule system that had different campaign worlds in different sci-fi universes. The game was called Alternity. I thought it was awesome. I love the rule system. The universes that they created, there was a plain sort of vanilla universe in the base game, but they then had Star Drive, which was this space opera. It was kind of Star Wars-y a little bit. They also did Gamma World that brought that game back. It'd been out of print for a while, and that's post-apocalyptic. It's kind of goofy. It's kind of, I suppose, almost Borderlands kind of feel. The second campaign setting they released for the game was essentially the X-Files as a role-playing game. So they took conspiracy theories, they took cryptids and sort of all of these weird aberrations and strange histories and aliens and folklore and monsters, and they put all of that into this game called Dark Matter. I love this game. I love the X-Files. I love all of that stuff. This game captures that feel so well. I mean, it's kind of a time capsule now because we're in such a different era of conspiracies. They're not the kind of relatively harmless stuff they were doing back in the X-Files days. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff about governments and whatever, but it was also a lot of people who were doing UFO sightings or Bigfoot or whatever. Now, obviously, conspiracies are got to a very different place politically. But this game, it captures that you are an agent of the Hoffman Institute, a sort of private non-profit that investigate all of this strange happenings, and you're trying to work out what's happened now. Kind of like Delta Green, if you're familiar with that. Obviously, Delta Green is still going and is tied into the Cthulhu mythos. This had its own mythos. It created this entirely new sort of world. Like I say, very X-Files or Millennium inspired, lots of other cool inspirations as well. This game, I adore it. I have kept every copy of the game books. I've kept all of the fiction my entire life. So as soon as I got these, I fell in love with them. I didn't get rid of them. I've just had to keep it. So I've been reaching out to some of the people who were involved in the creation of this game because it means so much to me. I want to make a really interesting video about it that kind of brings it to life because I think it's an overlooked and really forgotten gem from role-playing. So I'm going to be sharing that hopefully soon, but that's what I want to spend a lot of time on to really get it right and to really do justice to this game that I love. Another project I'm working on is Castle Drachenfels, or at least Drachenfels as a character in Warhammer. I've been toying with a couple of different ideas here. I want to look at the lore and the history of Drachenfels. I think he's a very cool character. I think it's a really cool story, and I think that it's odd that Drachenfels didn't really turn up very much in the Warhammer world outside of a few choice encounters. So I'm going to do something on the history of Drachenfels and the story. I also want to look in more detail at Castle Drachenfels itself. So as a dungeon crawl, what does this entail? In many ways, this is kind of like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay's version of the Tomb of Horrors from D&D, this kind of meat grinder, very tough dungeon. So I want to do almost a series on that. The other video that I would consider doing in that sort of series is the Tomb of Ayuchaban from L5R. I love Legend of the Five Rings. I'd love to spend more time talking about it at some point. And that dungeon is, I think, really, really interestingly conceived. The story behind the Tomb of Ayuchaban is fascinating. It's a very cool bit of lore. And like Castle Drachenfels and the Tomb of Horrors, it is full of tough challenges. And in many ways is sort of designed to kill off characters. So I'm going to take a look at whether or not I can find a good way to present some of that stuff. It might be the history of Drakenfels, but then there might be some more about the dungeon as a separate video, separate story. So those are the projects, some of the projects I'm working on. There's a couple I'm not going to mention that I think are going to be really fun, but I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early on some of that. So there will be some stuff coming up that will be big surprises, and there's one in particular that I am super excited about. It's a lot of work that is going into it, but I think it hopefully should be really interesting and people should get a lot out of it. I'm working on a couple of other projects as well outside of the channel. So I'm going to be creating and launching a Jordan Sorcery website where I'm going to share some of my writing. I've done a load of submissions over the years to things like the Black Library, open submissions, competition, if that's the right word, that they do over the years, and freelance stuff as well for a couple of different worlds. So I'm going to share some of that fiction, I'm going to share some of those scenarios, just to see if there's anything that people like in that. Obviously, I've been rejected in the Black Library submissions, so maybe they are rubbish stories, or they're just, it's just not very good writing. I don't know. I'm proud of some of that work, so I do want to put it out there in some way. So I'll be sharing that. I'll be talking about that at some point in some videos down the line. That's not happening immediately, but at some point you'll see that. The other project I'm working on is a podcast where I'm bringing together people who have been in the hobby for many years, like myself, and have got their own recollections and memories of the stuff that they have played over the years. Now, the idea behind this is, as you know, I'm big on nostalgia. I love the feeling of spending time with the history of these games that we all love. So what would the memories be like? Let's take a look at new stuff that's happening, so new releases, new products, new announcements from Games Workshop, from Wizards of the Coast, from other companies as well. They talk about something new that's coming out or coming out soon. What memories does that prompt? What does that bring forth from the mind? And do you reminisce about it in interesting ways? So our first episode, we take a look at Arcs of Omen. Obviously that's coming out for 40k right now, but that then prompted a really interesting discussion with a good gaming friend of mine about the history of different events that have happened in Warhammer and 40k, and what did we do in those events? How did we partake in ICAR 5 or 4? How did we get involved in the Screaming Death Roadshow? All of those kind of different reminiscence, bringing that and talking about that and sort of together reliving some of that and sharing some of it. So hopefully that sounds interesting. At some point the podcast will come out. We're probably going to be quite irregular. It's probably not going to be anything more than one a month, if that. But if it is something that people enjoy, we'll definitely try and do some more of it. I'd also quite like to bring other people from across the tabletop hobbies into those conversations as well at some point, and just get other people's memories and recollections. So that's that. I am reading a few things at the moment. So I'm currently reading City of Secrets by Nick Horth. This is an Age of Sigmar novel about the city of Excelsis, and there is a sort of conspiracy going on, and there's Tzeentchian factors at play. It's been okay so far. I don't want to come down on it too hard because I'm not that far into it. I've just not been quite grabbed in the way that I would hope. As I mentioned, I recently read Drakenfels for the first time, the Warhammer fantasy novel. Absolutely amazing. I just could not get enough of it. I thought it was awesome. I'm going to be reading all of the other all the other books in that series. They grabbed me in a way that this has not. So we'll see what happens. It's quite short, so it shouldn't be too long until I've done that. I've got a new Legends of the Five Rings novel coming up. So Josh Reynolds, who used to write a lot of Games Workshop Black Library fiction, has been doing lots of fiction for a lot of other companies, including Aconite Books, who are part of what was FFG and now is the sort of broader label that's got is Asmodee, that have got all of the Legends of the Five Rings, and they've got the Arkham horror and lots of other franchises. The L5R novels that Josh Reynolds has written have been fantastic. It is kind of a detective fiction. It's very in the sort of, it's kind of an Agatha Christie sort of feel to it, but if you transplant that from like 50s UK, England, and put it into the Rokugan, and just so you've got samurai and you've got all of the theatrical stuff and assassins and ninjas and all that sort of stuff, Really, really enjoying those. So I'm looking forward to reading this. This is the third one in the Diadoji Shin series, which is the detective. Really fun stuff. I am just about to finish the final part of Catwoman Lonely City, so I read quite a lot of comic books. I've not read as many comic books recently because I've been spending time on the channel, but I do love comics and a lot of stuff there. This has been Cliff Chang's sort of Elseworld exploration of a future in which Batman is dead and Catwoman was arrested for his murder, and she's now been released back into Gotham that has changed significantly post-Batman. Really enjoying that. Came out last year. I'm only just finishing the fourth part of that now. And then the final thing that I'm reading is Slaying the Dragon. So this is Ben Rigg's history of Dungeons and Dragons and TSR. I recently read Ian Livingstone's Dice Men, so his history of Games Workshop. Absolutely fantastic. Cannot recommend it enough. Very accessible, very quick read. Lots of fascinating bits of history from across Games Workshop. And if you enjoy Jordan Sorcery videos, you'll absolutely enjoy that. This, I'm hoping, has got some of that similar sort of feel for TSR and D&D. I'm fascinated by the history of TSR as a company, what went wrong. They had this incredible property, one of the greatest properties in tabletop gaming in Dungeons and Dragons, and obviously other games that I love that I've talked about on the channel, Dragonlance 5th Age and Alternity and Dark Matter that I'll be talking about at some point. But what went wrong that caused TSR to collapse and fail so catastrophically? I think we've seen recently that owning a property like Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering does not ensure success. You still have to manage it effectively, and they just didn't. And it's interesting to sort of get into that history. I am going to talk quickly about some of the projects I'm working on from a hobby perspective as well. So I've now started collecting an Empire army for 8th edition Warhammer. This is actually tied to a project I'm going to be doing much later in the year, where I'm looking at the scenarios that have been produced for Warhammer over the years, the campaign packs that they did loads of them for 5th edition, like Circle of Blood or Grudge of Drong. They've also done those kinds of things throughout the history of Warhammer, right the way back to the Terror of the Lichmaster and the Tragedy of Macbeth. Some really fun stuff in those scenario packs. I'm going to be working on a scenario that I will publish on the website, and we're going to play with an umpire. We're going to do Empire versus Skaven versus Undead, and it's going to be a really interesting, I hope, story and a bit of lore, and that is what I'm working towards with this battle retort video. So I'm learning now how to make interesting narrative-driven battle reporting videos through things like the Lost Relics video, so that later in the year I can really do justice to what I think could be a really interesting story and video. So that's going to be something to look out for. And to that end, I am currently working on some of the scenery for the battlefield. So this is going to be suitable for Wartime, because I'm going to be doing some Wartime stuff, and for Warhammer Fantasy. So we're going to have some hopefully moonlit, dark kind of terrain. As I said earlier, I think I'm not a great modeler or painter. I love the look of a battlefield that's got really well painted armies on, but I'm just not great at painting them. And I love how people can express themselves through their painting. It's just not something I don't have that gift. It's not something I can do. So I tend to go for much more simple, sort of monochromatic or just a couple of colours, and kind of, I like that stark, consistent look, a kind of uniform look across an entire army that has a bit of interest, might have some pops of colour throughout it, but is quite simple, because I can do it quickly. I don't have to invest much time. I don't need fancy techniques because I don't have them. Don't worry, not going to be doing any videos about my hobbying stuff, because I just don't think I've got anything interesting to share there. But I am going to chart some of the progression of this board and the terrain and the armies on my Instagram. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit about how those armies are going to come together over the course of the year, you can check out the Instagram at Jordan Sorcery to see that. I'm obviously, therefore, building this Empire army, 8th edition Empire army. I just recently got hold of one of the Forge World Empire Command kits. Absolutely love these sculpts. They are incredible. Just really, really awesome, characterful, detailed miniatures. I also have been adding to my collection of Rat Ogres. So I love Rat Ogres. I love the Skaven, all of them, but big, beefy, absolute unit Rat Ogres are my favourite. And to that end, I've been trying to collect up all of the different examples of rat ogres over the years. So I recently got hold of the Clan Skyer mechanical rat ogre that was released for more, just come in a little baggie, just very small pieces. But essentially, I feel really bad for this guy. It is a rat ogre that has been almost brought back to life, is barely there now, but has had all of his parts changed and over to sort of mechanical amputations. He looks really rough. He looks like he's in a lot of pain, so I feel terrible for him, but it's a fantastic miniature. It's really tells a story, that miniature. So very excited to put that together and have that as part of the army and scenarios as well. So yeah, lots of other stuff that I'm working on in terms of putting together these armies, building out these warbands and these armies for Mordheim, for Warhammer Fantasy. There's a lot of other stuff I'm doing as well. I'm kind of putting my Tau army that I've got for 40k to one side for the moment. I've also got a lot of Necromunda that I'm kind of pausing for right now to focus on some of the Warhammer stuff. But again, I'll share some of that through the social media stuff if you're interested in seeing it as it all comes together. A few people have sort of spoken about creating a Patreon and whether or not that's a part of the channel in the future. And I think I absolutely want to do something in that space. I would love to build the community. I would love to get that kind of support and to help make this more sustainable, because obviously a lot is invested into the equipment and into the channel and creating this content. So I am going to look at that. I'm going to spend some time thinking about it. I think if I do create a Patreon, I want to make sure that I am giving people value for the support that they're providing. And I'm not sure yet what that might be, whether that's early access to videos, whether that's voting on what topics are going to be covered in future histories, or prioritizing different topics for future histories, or for having a say in the development of scenarios, or all of this other stuff. It might be early access to bits of writing or to different types of videos. I'm reluctant to pledge more content in terms of more videos, because at the moment I'm just about balancing the creation of the content. It does take a long time to create the content with that full-time job, with the other responsibilities I've got. So I don't want to say, okay, on this Patreon, if we create it, you're going to get a bonus video all the time. There might be some stuff in that space, but I don't want to commit too much to that and then cause myself a lot of problems that make the channel unsustainable. So I do want to work out what's the best approach for that. Again, I would love your comments if you think creating a Patreon is a good idea, if you've got any suggestions for what kind of tiers or what kind of rewards and components there could be for that Patreon. Is it more access to me? Is it a Discord? Is it other stuff? Please share that, because I'm really, really open to feedback and thoughts on how to create something in that space that works. So I think we've probably covered everything I wanted to cover in this video. I will say once again, I really welcome any kind of feedback, any kind of thoughts. This is such a new type of video for me. I don't know if it's interesting, I don't know if it's successful. Do you want to see more of this kind of content from me, just this sort of stream of consciousness? Or do you just want me to focus on the histories? Is it okay to explore some of these other aspects of it? How else can I bring my personality and character into the channel, into the videos? Please get into the comments and just discuss it. Give it a like if you did enjoy this. Don't give it a dislike. I mean, you can. I will take it. I'll take the dislikes as appropriate feedback. But hopefully this has just been an interesting insight into some of what I'm working on, things that you can look forward to in the future, and how I want to sort of grow and expand the channel. That is it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was interesting. I am Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. How dare you come back after what you said to me? I'm sorry. I was just so upset. I fell to pieces. You fool. This is terrible puns.